Yes, we should point out that I understand the confusion. Parker Center is the former police department headquarters. Right. A lot of people said that that building was emblematic of a much different police in Los Angeles, sort of fortress-like. This is a much different building that was built by William Bratton as a architectural demonstration of what they believed was the new LAPD. I'd like to bring in Assemblyman Reggie Jones-Sawyer. He is somebody who knows a lot about this. Member of the California State Assembly from South Los Angeles. He's chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee. He's also a former deputy mayor. Assemblyman, in taking a look at this peaceful protest here, I get the sense, and I want you to comment on the fact that we've seen peaceful demonstrations today downtown in Venice and Hollywood, and you get the sense that there is a desire for the message not to be lost in what we've seen in some of the looting of the violence, and to keep the pressure on in a peaceful way to focus on what happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and how it reflects or mirrors issues around the country. Would you agree to that?
Yes, and I think because I was notified by the Baptist Ministers Conference of Southern California, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and National Action Network led by Reverend Toulis and Reverend Smart. And as a former chair of SCLC, they were talking about doing a march from, I think, First and San Pedro to the police headquarters. This may be the same group. They were supposed to start at 10. So part of this was to really be able to show how to do a peaceful demonstration. These men are not only men of God, they're men of peace. And so I think this is, if not part of the rally, that may be the essential elements of the party. A lot of us are still reacting to the unrest. And so they want to show the nation that we still have institutional racism. We just heard about the autopsy, which conflicts with the original autopsy. And as someone said, Stevie Wonder could see that man was murdered and killed. And so we need to show our outrage. And we must not lose our focus. And I think this is what this march is that you're seeing in front of Parker Center. It's showing that we need to continue to focus on the purpose behind what we're witnessing now. I mean, we really got to shine a light on the dark cloud of racism. That remains in every aspect of our society. And so I believe that is the march. And I believe if you were to get to the front of that to talk to either Reverend Smart or Reverend Toulis, they're both men of peace. They're working hard with my office to make sure that South Los Angeles doesn't explode, but it looks like they're going beyond even my district to try to show in a symbolic way, which is Parker Center, because I helped build the new, when I was director of real estate for the city, I helped find land and build a new police headquarters. That's also why it wasn't named Parker Center or Gates Center or anything, because we wanted to get away from that. And so you're absolutely right. The old Parker Center is a symbol of what we used to be. The new Parker Center is a symbol of where we should go and where we should be. And so I think that may be part of the symbolic gesture that you're seeing today, peacefully. And I'm glad you keep noting over and over and over again, and hopefully it stays that way. It is time to have peace, time to sit down, and then time to end this once and for all.
So for those who are listening to you, I should point out that the Assembly member knows of what he speaks. I mean, you're deeply, your family dates back to, you had an uncle who was one of the Little Rock Nine, who in 1957 desegregated Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, with Dwight Eisenhower sending in the 101st Airborne Division to help secure them. And and so you're deeply rooted in the history of civil rights. It must be heartening for you to see the effort, the passion, and the willingness of people to come out, even in the face of what they had seen, in an effort not to deflect the message that must be sent with clarity. So you must be heartened by what you're looking at.
Very much so. Someone was asking me about what's going on in Washington. what 45 is doing, what he's saying about going to martial law. And I think someone reminded people that probably the last time that we sent troops to squelch things of this nature without the governor or the mayors requesting it was probably in 1957 when a Republican, let me say that again, a Republican president sent the 101st Airborne and nationalized the National Guard to protect 8 African-American kids trying to get into an all-white high school. That was Dwight D. Eisenhower. And people would always tell me or ask me, why do you think so highly of Eisenhower, who's a Republican? And I always say he was a man who understood that racism had no place in America, and that he went out of his way to make sure that my uncle didn't get killed or lynched or whatever. And so that's the kind of leadership we need as we move forward, so that he allowed those KKK individuals to express themselves, but he made sure that what we were trying to express at that time on racial intolerance, and that every person in this country had a right to get the best education possible, that message got through. Remember, that message got through of all that hate that was surrounding that school, to where a person like myself, I was able to go to USC and on to Harvard with no problems because of their sacrifices. And so I'm hoping that this rally really reminds people of all the sacrifices people went through, so that we could get to this stage, which you could actively protest. But we also have people who look like me, who look Latino, black and brown, can come together, and most important, working with non-minorities to try to make the change that we need. This might be the last. I mean, think about it. We may be at the breaking point or the tipping point where we now will be able to confront this head on and actively work on ending racism in this country. That's the feeling I get. And if you were to talk to those peaceful individuals that are marching, you will understand their passion right now. They do not want this issue to go away. And I'm hoping that it doesn't, like it has in the past.
Right, and and you yourself and the organizers of this protest, they keenly understand the need to not just maintain the pressure. We have a fascinating image here of National Guardsmen, it appears, embracing some of the protesters. Boy, that's a scene you didn't see in previous demonstrations, that's for sure, as well as the pictures that we've seen of police officers taking a knee in solidarity with the peaceful protest. Again, that's something you never, ever would have thought of some 30, 40 years ago, and certainly after the Rodney King riots, certainly not after what happened in 1965. And Watts, very poignant moment that we're looking at live downtown in front of the Los Angeles Police Department headquarters, and even pictures being taken. That's quite astonishing. To that point, though, Martin Luther King once said, a riot only helps George Wallace. And George Wallace, of course, was the segregationist governor of Alabama at the time. Martin Luther King's point was that progress can only be made with peaceful protest, but it had to be concerted. It had to be completely focused, and it could not be deterred. It could not be interrupted. I get the impression that the leadership that we see, whether it's organized or spontaneous in the peaceful demonstrations here, know they have to maintain the message and keep it away from the visual images that so distract and actually take completely, not just miss the point, but move the point off what is fundamental to this, which is social justice and the pursuit of justice, particularly in Minneapolis.
Definitely. And if you look at you read the history of Martin Luther King, when he talked about nonviolence and the teachings of Gandhi, young people that were in SNCC and NAACP were like, no, we need change now, and we need to be a little more forceful about it. And some of that may have involved violence. When you looked at Malcolm X on the other side, who talked about by any means necessary, and in the middle, was Dr. Martin Luther King, who talked about nonviolence is the way that we're going to make change. He was scoffed at. A lot of people don't realize that when he came up with this for America, there were some people who said it will never change unless we do dramatic changes. And so when you read the history of how we got to where we are and all the changes and all the advancements, whether it's voting rights, whether it's affirmative action, he really was by himself. That's why he started the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, because the NAACP at that time didn't understand what he was doing. And young people didn't understand, and radicals didn't understand. And history has shown the way. And those individuals that are peacefully marching know that. I have pictures of dogs attacking young high schoolers in the 60s, Bull Connor, turning hoses on children because they wanted to integrate schools. They wanted the Voting Rights Act. They wanted all of that. And it was those images. Remember, it was those horrific images on television that helped convince America that we had a problem. I think these peaceful marches, that image of George Floyd being killed, are searing in people's minds, like those pictures back in the 60s that said enough is enough, and we as a country have got to change. And that movement started to move a lot quicker than most people could understand. So he went from Birmingham to the Lincoln Memorial almost overnight with this. And we're talking about a 28-year-old man that in 12 years, think about it, he was only active for 12 years, one man. That's why I always say it takes only one person to make a huge difference. And in 12 years, he's done more in 12 years than I will ever do in my 12 years in the Assembly. 12, think about it, 12 years he changed the world. One person, one man can make a difference. And when you look at that crowd of peaceful people, each one of them represents one person moving us forward in racial equality and making sure that we're more enlightened than we ever been before. And I think for law enforcement, we're going to look at those pictures 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 years ago, that it started now. It started with law enforcement officers taking a knee. There was a sheriff in I can't remember what city it was, saying, "I will march with you," and got a standing ovation from the crowd. Where activists said, "He says he will walk with us," and that turned that crowd around to where they want it. We need more of that. We need more individuals doing that to take us to the next level, but also to keep it in people's minds and consciousness. And I honestly believe we'll stop the violence in the street and hopefully increase the peace.
Assembly Member Reggie Jones-Sawyer, Chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee, Democrat from South L.A. Thank you very much. Stay safe, and I do appreciate your insight. We'd love to talk to you again if you have time. We'll take it back to the studio.
Wow.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Some powerful thoughts there.
Absolutely.